Japan is widely regarded as one of the safest countries in the world. Violent crime is rare, and when it does occur, it is often isolated, quickly resolved, and limited in scale. Murders involving multiple victims are exceptionally uncommon. When they do happen, they are treated as national shocks rather than local tragedies. Against this backdrop, the murders of the Setagaya family in Tokyo in December 2000 stand out not only for their brutality, but for how completely they defied expectations about crime, motive, and resolution in modern Japan. The Setagaya family lived in a quiet residential neighborhood in western Tokyo. Their home was modest, well-kept, and unremarkable in appearance. It was the kind of place that blended into its surroundings, part of a planned housing area near a public park. The family consisted of 4 people: the father, Mikio Miyazawa, his wife, Yasuko, and their 2 children, Naina, who was 8 years old, and Rei, who was 6. By all accounts, they lived an ordinary life. There were no known disputes with neighbors, no criminal ties, no public conflicts. They were not wealthy, nor were they socially isolated. On the night of December 30th, 2000, sometime after 11 p.m., someone entered their home. By the next morning, the entire family was dead. The bodies were discovered on December 31st, 2000, after relatives became concerned when the family failed to respond to calls and messages. When police entered the home, they found a scene that was immediately disturbing, not only because of the violence involved, but because of what appeared to be the killer's behavior afterward. Mikio Miyazawa was found on the first floor of the house, near the stairs. He had been beaten and stabbed. Yasuko and the 2 children were found upstairs, also killed with extreme violence. The wounds indicated that multiple weapons had been used. One knife had broken during the attack and was left behind. Another blade, believed to be a sashimi knife taken from the kitchen, had also been used. The killings were not quick. Forensic evidence suggested a prolonged struggle, particularly with the adults. Despite this, there was no indication that the family had been bound, drugged, or incapacitated beforehand. There was also no sign of forced entry. Doors and windows were intact. Nothing suggested a break-in. Perhaps most unsettling was what investigators found next. The killer had not fled immediately after committing the murders. Instead, he appeared to have stayed in the house for hours. Food from the family refrigerator had been eaten. The bathroom had been used. A computer had been accessed. The killer even left behind personal items, including clothing, fingerprints, DNA, and waste. In most murder cases, perpetrators attempt to minimize evidence. In this case, the opposite appeared to be true. As investigators processed the home, they were struck by how much evidence had been left behind and how little of it pointed clearly to a suspect. The killer's DNA was found in multiple locations, including blood and bodily waste. The fingerprints were clear. The clothing left behind included a jacket, shoes, and a scarf. The brand of the knife was traced to a specific manufacturer, one that was not commonly sold in Japan. Despite this wealth of physical evidence, the identity of the killer remained unknown. The house showed no signs of robbery. Valuables were left untouched. Money was not taken. There was no indication that the crime had been financially motivated. The brutality of the attack suggested anger or intent, but investigators could not determine why the family had been targeted. Neighbors reported no unusual sounds that night. No screams were heard. No dog barking raised alarms. The area was quiet. The park nearby, which had once been considered a security concern due to its open access, showed no clear evidence linking it to the crime. The lack of forced entry suggested that the killer either had access to the home or encountered no resistance when entering. The family had reportedly expressed concerns in the past about security due to nearby construction and foot traffic, but there was no indication they had installed additional locks or alarms. Every detail raised more questions than answers. As the case gained national attention, the Tokyo Metropolitan Police devoted enormous resources to the investigation. Tens of thousands of officers were assigned over the years. Hundreds of thousands of tips were reviewed. DNA samples were compared domestically and internationally. The DNA evidence indicated that the killer was male and likely of mixed ancestry, possibly with European or Korean lineage. This information, while unusual in Japan, did not lead to an arrest. The fingerprints did not match any in existing criminal databases. The clothing brands suggested possible foreign origin, but none could be conclusively traced to a suspect. Investigators examined every aspect of the family's life. Mikio Miyazawa worked for a company related to urban planning and development. At one point, he had been involved in disputes with local groups over park development. Some speculated this could have led to retaliation. Others suggested the possibility of a random intruder, though the level of violence and the time spent in the home made this less convincing. There were also theories involving organized crime, but no solid evidence supported these claims. No group claimed responsibility. No credible witness emerged. The longer the investigation continued, the more the case became defined not by what was known, but by what could not be explained. One of the most troubling aspects of the case was the killer's apparent calm after the murders. Eating food, using the toilet, accessing the family's computer, these actions suggested either extreme confidence or psychological detachment. It was unclear whether the killer was attempting to mislead investigators or simply acting without fear of discovery. The fact that the killer left behind so much evidence suggested either inexperience or a belief that capture was unlikely. Yet the crime itself appeared deliberate and methodical. The use of multiple weapons, the control of the scene, and the lack of panic indicated planning. This contradiction became central to the case. Was the killer impulsive or calculated? Familiar with the family or a stranger? Acting alone or with assistance? None of these questions could be answered conclusively. As years passed, the case grew colder. Technology advanced. DNA testing improved. Still, no match was found. The Miyazawa family's relatives continued to seek answers. Memorials were held. Public awareness campaigns persisted. The house itself was eventually demolished, but the land remained a place of quiet remembrance rather than redevelopment. Each year, on the anniversary of the murders, police renewed their appeal for information. Each year, no arrest followed. The case became symbolic of something deeply unsettling, the idea that even in a society known for safety and order, a crime of extraordinary violence could occur without resolution. It challenged assumptions about security, predictability, and justice. More than 2 decades later, the Setagaya family murders remain unsolved. This story does not end with an arrest, a confession, or a courtroom verdict. It ends with absence. With evidence that speaks but does not name. With questions that remain unanswered despite every available resource. The Miyazawa family did not live extraordinary lives. That is part of what makes this case so disturbing. There was no warning, no visible threat, no clear motive. Only an ordinary household, interrupted by violence that should not have happened, and a silence that followed. In a country where safety is assumed, this case stands as a reminder that certainty can fail, systems can reach their limits, and some truths may never surface. What happened inside that house is known only in fragments. And for now, that is all that remains. Thank you for watching. Subscribe and like for more amazing stories on our channel. See you soon.